Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at setting up our engine speed reference offset value within our M1 programming. Now this is a very, very important value. If we don't have this set correctly, our ignition timing, as we're calling it out from the Motec, won't be delivered to the engine. So essentially our engine and our Motec won't be synced. The Motec's not going to understand the engine's position within the actual operating cycle, and therefore the timing will be delivered incorrectly. Other things like injection timing hinge upon our reference offset value being set correctly. So we want to make sure that we are calibrating this right. There's a very unique way to do this, so I'm going to talk about and outline that process in this training module. We'll actually be using a Honda K20 engine for this particular tutorial in this particular example. Let's jump in here and take a look at what the engine speed reference offset represents for both a multi-tooth and a missing tooth trigger pattern. A little bit different in what it represents, and then we're going to dig into setting up our file here for a Honda K20, and then we're going to crank over our engine and do the actual test with a timing light. I'll describe what all this is going to look like and all the details here as we go through the tutorial. Let's jump in here. We're going to move from our field tuning area, and we're going to go from tuning into setup. Now if we go here into our reference sync option in our window, we're going to find that we have our reference offset value here. Now this value is currently set at 0, but it's likely to not be a value of 0. It's going to be either a positive or negative value. This value can be anywhere from positive 720 to negative 720. So we have a pretty large range what the reference offset value can be set at. Let's talk about what this actually means so we understand what it's going to have in terms of our programming context here. So let's go in and use F1 to be able to see some of the Motec help file to get a better idea. They have a really nice definition of what this represents for multi-tooth and a missing tooth option. So we know here, if I actually just click out of this real quick, that we have our engine speed reference state. Well, we like to see it show cycle lock. Cycle lock means that it's locked onto the pattern and it's going to fire the coils and injectors, so the engine should fire off. We have to get cycle lock in order to even have the engine fire off. So the cycle lock is very important as we move in here and take a look at what this represents here. The cycle lock is going to be defined differently for a multi-tooth and a missing tooth option. So looking at our multi-tooth is where we have an even number of teeth on our crank trigger, and we have whatever amount of pulses on our synchronization or our home. In this particular example, they're just showing that they have the pulses coming from our crank trigger. They have a single pulse synchronization or home. We're going to be looking here when we're defining what the reference offset value represents in a multi-tooth option as being the synchronization tooth. So we look a tooth before that, and that edge of the tooth is going to define our cycle lock position. Then from our cycle lock tooth here, we're going to define the distance between the top dead center and that cycle lock as the degrees that we place into our value here. And that's going to allow the Motec to understand our engine position within the degrees of rotation through a cycle. Very, very important. So multi-tooth is actually what we're going to find for a Honda K20 engine. Honda K20 engine has 12 total teeth, actually 12 teeth plus 1 on our crank trigger, but they're not going to have a missing tooth. It's going to be an even number of teeth, and then we'll find that the reference offset here is something we need to set for that. So the multi-tooth would be applicable for a Honda K20 engine. Now when we're talking about different engines, so let's say we're talking about a Volkswagen engine, they're typically a 60 missing 2, and then they have at least 1 on the home, but it might be a different amount of teeth on the home. In any case, when we're talking about our reference offset, it's going to be always looking at, we have our missing tooth. It's the tooth right after the missing tooth. And then it's going to be defining that as our cycle lock position. And then we define the reference offset as the degrees until we reach top dead center. So that's going to be pretty straightforward in that particular example. So it means something different based on different crank triggers that we're dealing with, different pulses. So let's jump and take a look now at actually setting our reference offset. Again, this value can be positive or negative. It's really going to depend on what specific pattern we're dealing with and where, in the multi-tooth, for example, where that synchronization tooth is located. So what I'm going to do here is jump in and set up this configuration for engine speed parameters and synchronization parameters. So it's going to accept a Honda K20 pattern, and then we'll do our test. So the engine speed reference mode here, we're going to move it from a multi-tooth. I'm going to go down in my list here and grab a Honda K20. So go down our list here. We should find it at the beginning of the list. Here we go, Honda K20. The tooth count does not matter when we're talking about this OEM patterns that we've selected here. So we don't need to worry about setting our reference tooth count. It just so happens that it is a 12 tooth plus 1 pattern, but this is ignored when we are selecting the predefined patterns. So if we're doing a multi-tooth or doing a missing tooth, we do need to specify then the reference tooth count. Otherwise, it's ignored with an OEM pattern. Looking here, the offset, that's something we're going to determine.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.